Hello and welcome to the second part of our series on using PHPStan, static analysis and type hunting to improve your code quality. In this segment, we will share tips on handling communication with third-party services and retrieving data. We will also explore how type hunting and static analysis can enhance your code quality and help prevent bugs. Let's jump into the code. In this API, we are passing a news resource to this controller, and depending on the type of resource, we are injecting the proper interface implementation. Let's take a look at the service provider. As we can see here, we have two types of sources. We can find them in the enum here, and we can add more. If the type is New York Times, so we are resolving the get New York Times service. If it's news.org, so the get news API. Otherwise, we'll be throwing an exception. So here, depending on the source, we are fetching the data. Let's take a look at the get news from New York Times. Okay, here we are passing the parameters, those parameters to the API and retrieving data, then returning the JSON. Okay, so we have those parameters through this request. This request passing those parameters to the API. Okay, let's start by fixing the stan or the static analysis errors. Okay, we have two errors here. First, at the app service provider, here we are passing a source without from an undefined array. It's done like this. Here, defining a var, and this var should be an array, and the array has a shape, and this is a source here. It's easy. As a string. Okay, and here just parameters, and the error is gone. Great. But here, to be more precise, let's tell the user or the developer what are the probable types or values of the source. Source here is like this, but we can add some hints here. Can get them from this enum and news. Okay, let's run the stan again. Okay, then we have an error in the news request. Fetch New York Times news request. Alright, let's start by testing the API as it is before addressing any static analysis issues or bugs. Once we have done that, we'll move on to explore ways to improve it. Okay. Oh, we have an error here according to the begin date. The begin date as the documentation, it must be this format. So let's start code again. Amazing. So how we can improve this with static analysis? Here, if we add maybe like a number, what we will get? Okay, we'll get an error, so it must be in a boolean. So here also we have to force it as a boolean. Okay, nice. So we have those two parameters that we have to have some rules with static analysis. Okay, but before, let's start by hitting the composer stan, and as we see here that in request we have to give this data a shape. So we have the same way. Let's give it a shape depending on those parameters. This is an API key, so it's a string. Its space must be boolean, and the begin date must be a string. Okay, here if we get back to the service, so if we put here some numbers, so or some, we'll get an error. Need some time to cache. Okay, we get an error here. it's expected a boolean but get a string. Okay, so here we are forcing a string. But what about the begin date? It's not a normal way to, or it's not very popular to force a string shape with static analysis. So we just here we can add some hints. It must be with this format. So it's one. So if we went back here, we can see when hover that we have this hint, but this will not force the user or the developer to write it in this way. So we can add a more layer or another layer to ensure that the format of the date is in this way. So I added this code here to test if the data begin date is matching this regex. So with this mixture between through an exception and the static analysis, we get a very powerful way of preventing early bugs. So let's go back here and add something like this and try to hit the API again. So we get an early exception before hitting the API. Nice. After making this mixture between the static analysis and early throwing an exception, now let's move to the second part where we have to handle the data coming from this third party. In this second part of our video, we will focus on handling unpredictable data structures from third-party APIs. These APIs can return data in various formats or shape, making it challenging to work with consistently. To tackle this, we need to normalize data, essentially convert it to a structured and predictable format and integrate it seamlessly with our program or system. Here we have this API. Let's start to hit it. Okay, we see here parameters and different type of them, and if we hit the second one, we will see a different parameters. So here, how we solve this problem? First, we have to identify the data pattern that the shape of the data that we want to save in our system. Then we have to create a normalization function, okay, across the system. For each service or for each news source, we have to create a separate news separate normalize function. So here I just prepare them. Okay, and those things, this is a normalize function for the data function for the New York Times. So here we are dealing with different parameters and just some test cases here to just make the data pattern like this. So here's the PHPStan or static analysis for the incoming data. We get this from the documentation of the news and by helping with the AI generating those things. And here's the return pattern or the data pattern. This data pattern should be the same across all the news source service functions. So here's it. What is the problem here? Okay, it's not used. So here we have to just this and fit normalized data with this one. Okay, let's clear and test the stan again. Okay, here we have an error because we don't specify the shape of this function, this parameter, sorry. So here make it var, and here we pass this array. Okay, and here's the var, which is response, and here we should clear the error. Great. Now, before finishing this up or summing this up, let's try to test what we have here with this normalize function. Okay, we have a data that match our data pattern. That's a great one. And before that, let me just copy and paste the normalize function for the other resource. Okay, this is the normalized function for the other news source. Okay, if we try to hit this API again, as we saw, we have the data that match our pattern. And if we change the news, the source to the news, we'll be having the same pattern. So this is a great one. We have, or we learned how to deal with unpredictable data. We make some normalization, we make some type hinting, and now it's very powerful and very handy and bug free. So if we hover over this normalize function, we can know what the parameters and what the return type. Awesome. In this video, we learned how to deal with unpredictable type of data with type hinting with help of the static analysis. We reduce amount of bugs that will appear in our system, and we made our code more cleaner. Thank you for watching this series. I hope you enjoy it and learn a lot how to deal with this type of static analysis and how improve your code clean and reusability. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next video. Bye bye.